Well, hello, sugar. Come on in and shut the cold out behind you. Last time I promised I'd tell you what my mama kept in her pantry that never came from any store, and how she fed 6 children clear through a mountain winter with no freezer at all. Not a small one, honey. None. There wasn't a freezer in our holler till I was near grown. And I want you to hear the size of that. From the last tomato in September to the first green thing in April, everything that went on our table had been put up by hand, by my mama, with salt and sand and smoke and patience. Folks nowadays would call that backward. Well, sugar, the funny thing is, the college people have gone back and looked at these old ways with their microscopes, and one after another they're finding out that mama was right, and that she was right for reasons she never knew. She just knew it worked because her mama's kitchen was still standing. 25 of them today, and one, I'll tell you honest, one they got wrong, and it can kill a person. So you stay with me clear to the end for that one, because I'd never forgive myself if I sent you off half-taught. Number 1. The barrel in the hill. Not everybody had a root cellar, honey. They cost lumber and labor a family might not have. So mama's people did what their people did. They dug a hole in the hillside and sank an old barrel in it up to its neck, packed straw around the sides, laid in the turnips and cabbages and winter beets, and put the lid on with a flat rock and a mound of dirt over that. And that barrel held near about 38-40 degrees all winter long without one thing being paid to anybody. That's the same cold as the refrigerator humming in your kitchen right now, sugar. And the earth did it for free. The ground 4 feet down doesn't care what the weather's doing up top. It stays where it is. The scientists have a fancy word for it now. They call it thermal mass, and they're building whole houses on the idea. Mama called it a hole in the hill. Some of the best inventions in this world, honey, are just somebody noticing what was already there. Number 2. The sandbox. Carrots, beets, parsnips, turnips, they don't rot in a cellar, sugar. They wither. They go limp and rubbery because the dry air pulls the water right out of them. So mama had a wooden crate of damp sand down there, and the roots got laid in it in layers. 1 layer of roots, 1 of sand, and never touching each other. The damp sand holds the moisture against them so they stay crisp, and it keeps them apart so if one goes bad it can't tell its neighbors. I have pulled a carrot out of that sand in March and snapped it, and it snapped clean and sweet like it came out of the garden that morning. Now they've studied it and they'll tell you it's about humidity and airflow and keeping the respiration down. Mama'd have said it plainer. A root wants to think it's still in the ground, honey, so don't tell it any different. Number 3. Every apple in its own paper. Apples went in the cellar, wrapped one at a time in newspaper. And honey, that was not fussiness, that was quarantine. Because you have heard the saying all your life, 1 bad apple spoils the whole barrel. Well, mama's mama knew it was true, 100 years before anybody knew why. It turns out a bruised or ripening apple breathes out a gas, and that gas is a ripening signal, and it tells every apple around it to hurry up and get old. The college people call it ethylene now. So 1 soft apple in an open barrel will walk the whole barrel down to mush before Christmas. Wrapped in paper, each one keeps its breath to itself. And you can use the same thing forward, sugar. Set a hard green tomato in a paper sack with 1 ripe apple, and it'll turn red for you in a few days. The old saying was never a scolding about people, honey. It was a preserving instruction. It's just too true about people to leave alone. Number 4. Leather breeches. Now here is the most mountain thing I will tell you today. Green beans, the whole pod, strung on a long cotton thread with a darning needle like beads on a necklace, and hung across the porch rafters to dry, till they were wrinkled and leathery, and looked for all the world like a row of little empty trousers. That's how they got the name honey, leather breeches, and every porch in the holler wore them in September. They kept a year in a paper sack, no jars, no lids, no sugar, no salt, nothing bought. To cook them you soak them overnight, then simmer them slow with a piece of fat back for 2-3 hours. And I'll be honest with you, they don't taste like a fresh green bean at all. They taste nuttier, deeper, a little like the smell of a barn in a good way. There's people who grew up on them who won't touch a fresh bean in winter. They want the breeches. Drying doesn't just save a food sugar. Sometimes it makes a different food, and a better one. Number 5. The tin roof dryer. In September, the shed roof turned into Mama's dehydrator. Apples cored and cut in rings, peaches halved, laid out on clean cloths on that hot tin with cheesecloth tented over to keep the flies off, and turned every few hours. That tin gets a good deal hotter than the air, honey, and the sun works on the top while the tin works on the bottom, and in 2-3 good days those rings are dry and pliable like chamois. She'd bring them in every evening, because the dew will undo a whole day's work, and out again in the morning, then into a flour sack hung from a rafter. Dried apples went into fried pies all winter, and if you have never had a hand pie of dried apples cooked in a skillet, sugar, you have a treat waiting on you. They sell a machine now with trays and a fan and $100 price on it. Mama's ran on the sun and cost her the walk up the ladder. Number 6. Meat under lard. This one sounds wrong to modern ears, and it is pure genius. After hog killing, some of the sausage and tenderloin got fried down, cooked all the way through, packed into a stone crock, and then covered over completely with hot melted lard, an inch of it on top, and set in the cool of the cellar. That lard hardens into a lid, honey, a seal a hair can't get through, and the meat under it keeps for months. Air is what spoils meat, air and the little things that ride in on it, and Mama shut the air out with grease. Now, the French have been doing this for centuries, and they call it confit, and they charge you $30 a plate for it in the city. Mama called it potted meat, and it was a Tuesday. Same idea exactly, sugar. Same idea exactly. The difference between peasant food and fancy food, honey, is mostly just who's telling the story. Number 7. The salt box. The hog was killed in the first hard cold of November, honey. Never before. And that timing was not superstition. That was refrigeration. The hams and shoulders went into a wooden box and got packed in salt, buried in it, for about a day and a half for every pound they weighed. And Mama's people knew that rule by heart, the way you know your phone number. What the salt does, and they know this now for certain, is it pulls the water out of the meat and out of anything living in the meat, so nothing can grow in there at all. A well-cured country ham will hang in a smokehouse for 2 years and be better for it. There is a ham hanging in my own smokehouse today from a hog we killed the year before last, and it is not spoiled, sugar. It is aging, same as a fine cheese. Salt was the first refrigerator anybody ever had. Whole wars were fought over it, honey, and here it sits in a shaker on your table like it's nothing. Number 8. Hickory smoke. After the salt came the smoke, and the smokehouse was its own little building, dark as the inside of a pocket, with a low smoldering hickory fire on the dirt floor. Not a hot fire, honey, never a cooking fire, just enough green hickory to make it weep smoke for days. And that smoke does 3 jobs at once. It dries the outside of the meat into a rind. It coats it in creosote and the tars that come off the wood. And the college people will tell you now those are natural antimicrobials. They flat out kill what would spoil it. And it keeps the flies off. Mama didn't have those words, but she had the results. Hanging in the dark. And it tastes like home, sugar. There's a smell in an old smokehouse that gets in the wood and never leaves it. And I could find my granddaddy's smokehouse blindfolded in the dark by that smell alone. And I expect the last thing I forget in this life will be standing in that doorway with him. Number 9. The kraut crock. Cabbage, shredded fine, salted and packed down in a stone crock till its own juice came up and covered it over, then a plate and a rock on top to hold it under, and a cloth over that, set in the cool for 6 weeks. That's all it is, sugar. Cabbage and salt and thyme, and Mama's kraut fed us all winter and it never once went bad. Now here is where the microscope people got real excited, honey. That souring is billions of little good bacteria eating the sugar in the cabbage and making acid out of it, and that acid makes the crock too sour for anything harmful to live in it. The kraut defends itself, and they'll tell you now those same little bugs are good for your insides. They've got whole shelves of pills at the drugstore trying to sell you what's sitting in a crock in the cellar for the price of a cabbage. Mama just knew that a winter with kraut on the table was a winter with less sickness in the house. She was righter than she knew. Number 10. Sour corn and the brine kind of pickle. Same trick as the kraut, honey. Run on other vegetables. Corn cut off the cob, or cucumbers, or beans, down in a crock under a salt brine, and left to sour. And I want to be clear about something here, because it confuses folks. A brine pickle is not a vinegar pickle. Vinegar pickles are quick. You pour the sour on. Brine pickles make their own sour, slow, the way the kraut does, and they taste alive, in a way the vinegar ones never do. Fizzy almost, sharp at the back of your jaw. Sour corn fried in a little grease with onions is one of the great foods of these mountains, and almost nobody outside them has ever tasted it. Mama kept a crock going from August till it was gone. If you try one thing off this whole list, sugar, let it be a small crock of sour corn. It costs you $1, and it will taste like a place you've never been. Number 11. Everything under the brine. Now this is the rule that makes all the souring work, and it's the one folks break. Whatever is under the liquid keeps. Whatever floats up above it grows fur. That's the whole of it. So every crock got a plate and a clean creekstone on top, scrubbed and boiled, to hold the vegetables down under their own juice, and Mama checked them, and if the level fell she'd add a little salt water to bring it back up. If a bit of scum came on the top she skimmed it off and thought nothing of it. That's just the yeast having its say, and what's underneath is fine. Under the brine there's no air, honey, and the things that would spoil your food need air to work, so they can't. It is a hard little rule, and it does not bend, sugar. Whatever you leave sticking up out of the protection is the part that goes bad, and I have found that to be true of a good deal more than cucumbers. Number 12. Eggs that keep a year. Hens quit laying in the short dark days of winter, honey, right when a family needs eggs the most. And Mama got around that in the fall when the eggs came faster than we could eat them. Water glassing, they called it. A crock of water with slaked lime stirred into it, and the fresh eggs set down in it, never washed, and it went in the cool dark. Those eggs came out good 8 months, 10 months later. Fine for baking, fine for scrambling. And here's the science of it, sugar, and it's the best part. A fresh laid egg comes wearing a natural coat the hen puts on it. They call it the bloom, and it seals the shell. Wash it off and the egg starts dying. Don't wash it, and set it in that lime water, and the lime settles into the pores of the shell and seals it the rest of the way, and shuts the air out. That is why store eggs won't work for this, honey. They've been scrubbed. Mama's rule was never wash an egg till the minute you crack it, and she was exactly right. Number 13. Butter underwater. Butter goes rancid because the air gets at the fat and turns it, so Mama did to butter what she did to everything else. She took the air away from it. The fresh butter got worked hard with a wooden paddle, and I mean worked, till every drop of buttermilk was pressed out of it, because it's the milk left in butter that sours first, not the fat. Then it was salted, packed into a crock, and covered over with cold salt water, and that water changed out every few days, kept sweet for weeks in the coolest corner without one bit of ice. There's a fancy French butter dish sold now that works on exactly this. A little cup of water the butter sits upside down in. It costs $30 in a nice shop, honey. It is Mama's crock with a prettier hat on. Number 14. The springhouse. If your people were lucky enough to have a good spring, honey, you built a little stone house right over where it came out of the ground, and that was your refrigerator, and it never needed a thing. Spring water comes out of the mountain at about 50 degrees, summer and winter both. It does not care that it's August. So the milk cans and the crocks of butter, and the buttermilk, sat down in that running water on the stone floor, and the cold water carried the heat away from them all day and all night for nothing, forever. Coolest place on the whole farm, and it smelled like wet stone and cream. Children got sent to fetch from the springhouse, and children lingered in the springhouse in July and got hollered at for it. That's where the sweet milk was, and that's where I'd be right now if I could pick a place to stand. Number 15. Let the milk sour on purpose. Raw milk left in a warm room does not rot, sugar. It clabbers. It thickens and sets and goes pleasantly tart, because the good souring bugs that live in it get to work and turn it acid before anything bad can get a foothold. The very same defense as the kraut crock. Mama set the extra milk out apart on purpose. Clabber was eaten with a spoon and a little sugar or a little black pepper, and the churned buttermilk was the drink of these mountains and the secret of every biscuit worth eating, because that sourness is what wakes the soda up and makes a biscuit rise light. Nothing in a dairy went to waste in that house. Sweet milk to drink, cream to churn, butter to keep, buttermilk to bake with, clabber to eat, and the last of the way to the hogs. 1 cow, honey, and 5 different foods out of her, and not one thing thrown away. Number 16. The wall of jars. When the jars came into these mountains, they changed everything, honey. And Mama canned like it was a job, because it was. Tomatoes, beans, corn, kraut, apples, jam, soup mixture. And the whole summer went up on those shelves in glass where you could see it. And there's something I want you to understand about that wall that isn't about food. In the fall it was full, floor to ceiling, and my mama would stand in that pantry door with the lamp and just look at it before she went to bed. That wall was the answer to the only question that mattered in a mountain winter. Are we going to be all right? And the jars said yes, we're going to be all right. There is not a bank account in this world, sugar, that ever gave anybody the peace that a full pantry gives you. I want that for you. Number 17. The ping. Now the jar has to seal, or none of it counts. And Mama's ear was the gauge. Hot food into a hot jar. Wipe that rim clean with a wet cloth so not one seed or bit of pulp is sitting where the lid has to touch. Put the lid on and process it. And then you set them on a folded towel on the table and you go on about your work, and one by one, over the next hour, you hear it. Ping, ping. That little tin sound of a lid pulling down as the jar cools and the air inside shrinks. 6 children in that house learn to count pings from the next room, and in the morning you press the middle of every lid with your thumb, and a sealed one is hard and dished down and won't move, and one that gives and clicks did not seal, and that jar goes straight to the icebox to be eaten this week. Never ever put a doubtful jar on the shelf, honey, and label the lid with the month, because you will not remember. You will think you'll remember. You won't. Number 18. Here's the one they got wrong. I have to stop and tell you this plain, sugar, because I love you, and because the old ways were not perfect, and I would rather bore you than bury you. Mama's people canned green beans, corn, meat, all of it, in a pot of boiling water on the stove, because that's how their mothers did it. And that is not safe, honey, and folks died of it and never knew what took them. The reason is this: there is a germ that lives in plain garden dirt, and it makes a spore so tough that boiling water will not kill it. In a jar of beans, which is not a sour food, that spore wakes up in the airless dark and makes a poison, and there is no smell to it, no taste, no cloud in the jar to warn you. Sour things, honey, are safe in a boiling water bath. That acid stops it cold. Pickles, jams, kraut, tomatoes with lemon juice added. But green beans, corn, meat, soups, anything that isn't sour has to go in a pressure canner, which gets hotter than boiling ever can, and that is the only thing that kills it. Mama learned that from the county extension lady in her 50s, and she changed how she did it that same summer, and she was not too proud to. Honor the old ways, sugar, but when somebody comes along with a good reason and shows you better, you take it. That's not disrespecting your mama. That's being worth what she taught you. Number 19. Sorghum instead of sugar. Sugar cost money, honey, cash money, and cash was the scarcest thing in the mountains. Sorghum molasses did not. It came off our own patch of cane, pressed and boiled down in the fall at a neighbor's mill with everybody there and the mule going round and round, and it filled the jugs for the year. Sorghum sweetened the coffee, went on the biscuits, went in the gingerbread and the baked beans and the stack cakes. And it does not spoil, sugar, near about ever, because it's too thick and too sweet for anything to live in. The syrup pulls the water right out of any germ that tries. And unlike white sugar, it came with the iron and the minerals still in it, which is why the old folks gave a spoonful to a child they thought was peaked. There is a whole shelf of dark syrups at the health store now, with paragraphs on the label. It's cane juice boiled down, honey. We made it in a field with a mule. Number 20. Honey never dies. Every place had bee gums, hollow log hives, out at the edge of the garden, and honey was the other sweet. And honey is the strangest keeper of them all, sugar, because it does not go bad. Not in a year, not in 100. They have opened up tombs in Egypt thousands of years old and found honey in a jar in there still good enough to eat. Why? Because there's almost no water in it, and what water there is, the sugar holds so tight nothing can drink it, and it's a touch acid besides. Nothing can live in honey. That's also why it was on every cut and burn in the house, and why it went in the hot toddy with the whiskey and the lemon for a cough. And now the hospitals have gone back to putting medical honey on burn dressings, which Mama would have found funny. And if your honey goes hard and grainy in the jar, honey, it has not spoiled, it has only crystallized, and it will come right back with the jar set in warm water. Number 21. The braid on the wall. Onions and garlic came out of the ground in summer, and they were not put straight away, honey. They were cured first, spread out in the shade on screens or laid on the porch for 2-3 weeks till the outsides went papery and the necks dried shut. That drying is the whole thing. A cured onion has closed its own door, and that dry papery skin is a real seal against rot. Then Mama braided them by their dried tops into long ropes and hung them on a nail in the cool, dry pantry, up off everything, air all around, where she could see any soft one at a glance and pull it out before it got to its neighbors. Not the cellar for these, sugar. The cellar's too damp. They want cool and dry, well cured and hung right. Onions went clear to spring, and I will tell you, honey, a braid of onions hanging on a kitchen wall is as pretty a thing as anybody ever paid a decorator for. Number 22. Pumpkins under the bed. Winter squash and pumpkins don't want the cold cellar either, honey. Cold makes them rot. They want it cool and dry, about like a spare bedroom in a house heated by one stove. And that is exactly where they went, in a row on a board under the bed in the cold room. Everyone cut with a good long stem left on, because a pumpkin pulled off its stem has an open wound, and it will go bad from there in a month, and never a bruised one put up, and never one touching another. Cushaws and candy roasters and pie pumpkins, laid out under there like a family of sleeping cats. And they'd keep till February, and get sweeter, honey, because the starch keeps turning to sugar the whole time they lay there. A pumpkin pie at Christmas out from under the bed. Every corner of a house was a working part of that house, sugar. Nothing in it was just decoration, and that included the children. Number 23. The rafter pharmacy. Above Mama's stove and along the pantry beam hung the bundles, tied with string, upside down. Sage for the sausage, and it had to be our sage. Mint and catnip for a fussy baby's tea. Boneset and yarrow for a fever. Sassafras root for the spring tonic that turned the tea pink, and that every child in the mountains was made to drink whether they cared to or not. They hung upside down so the oils ran down into the leaf and out of the sun, because sunlight bleaches the good right out of an herb. And they got crumbled into jars only when they were bone dry and never before. That whole pharmacy grew within 100 steps of the door, sugar, and cost nothing but knowing which was which and when to cut it. That knowing is the part we're losing, honey. The plants are still out there in your ditch. It's the knowing that's dying out, and that's the whole reason I sit here and talk to you. Number 24. The Mother in the Jar. And after all that apple work, honey, Mama still wasn't done, because the peels and the cores did not go to the hogs. They went in a crock of water with a spoon of sorghum and a cloth over the top. In a few weeks that turned to hard cider, and a few weeks more and it went on past that and turned to vinegar all by itself, with a strange rubbery cloud growing on top that she called the mother. And a piece of the mother from the last batch went into the new crock to get it started. So Mama's vinegar had a lineage, sugar, going back to a crock in her own mother's pantry. And that vinegar pickled the beets and dressed the greens and cut the grease and cleaned the windows and went in a rag on a hot forehead. It was the last thing squeezed out of an apple that was already used up twice. Nothing in that house was ever finished being useful, honey. It just kept getting handed to something else. Number 25. Eat the oldest first. And here's the last one, sugar. And it isn't a preserving trick at all. It's the thing that made all the others work. Every time Mama put up a new batch, she moved the old jars to the front and the new ones to the back. Every single time, without fail, all her life. Because a pantry that isn't rotated is not a pantry, honey. It's a museum. And I have been in kitchens where a proud row of jars on the top shelf was 8 years old, and not one of them fit to open. All that work in the hot August kitchen, wasted, because nobody turned the shelf around. And it's the same with everything she gave me, sugar. The barrel in the hill, the beans on the string, the eggs in the lime. None of it keeps by itself. It keeps because somebody tends it, and turns it, and uses it, and teaches it to the next one. The old ways aren't in the jars, honey. They're in the hands that keep reaching up to that shelf. So use what you've got, teach it to somebody young, and put the new one in the back. Well, there's Mama's whole winter, sugar. 25 ways and not a freezer among them. And I hope you heard the one about the green beans and the pressure canner, because that one I need you to carry out of here with you. Now you tell me down in the comments, what did your people put up, and what did they keep it in? A cellar, a springhouse, a crock, a hole in the hill? I want to know what your grandmother's pantry smelled like, honey, because I read every one of these with my evening coffee, and your stories are better than television. If you learned one thing today, you go on and hit that like button, and if you want to keep the old ways alive with me, subscribe and bring somebody young back with you next time. Next time I want to tell you about Mama's wash day, the whole Monday of it, the battling stick and the black kettle in the yard, and how she got a white shirt clean with no machine and no bleach, and what she did about a stain that folks still can't beat today. You won't want to miss that one. This is Granny Pearl, and my chair is always right here. Bless your heart for sitting with me, honey. Now go put something up.